So this is Joe Duff, and we're watching an archived bit of footage captured by the crane cam. And this is two birds from last year, number 4 and 5, that have arrived back at White River and back on the territory where they were raised. So natural curiosity for them to come right back to where they were raised, and now there's some interlopers there. The new chicks for 2013. So you kind of wonder what's going through their minds.
It's interesting that they're heading right for the pen.
Yeah. This two male birds, so they've kind of bonded. Certainly not pair bonded, but they've bonded and they're hanging out together and behaving kind of like a couple. Sometimes with young birds, they call that playing house. Siblings will bond together and stay together and behave a lot like a couple, and then when they reach breeding age, they just split up and find appropriate mates.
Looks like the chicks are curious about them.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, these are adult role models for the chicks, and it's good to have them there in some sense, but the adults can be, or sub-adults, can be aggressive. You can see that strut posturing there slightly as the chicks get close. Some bustle is up in the air.
They're staring each other down.
Yeah. Red patch is expanded substantially. You can see him looking straight at the bird, and so a little aggression.
Stomping his feet.
See? Fluffing his feathers and lowering his head to show that red patch on his forehead. That's a sign of aggression or irritation, and they can expand it or contract it. This is also a threat posture. It's kind of like, you're not that important. I can carry on with my regular duties like grooming. You see that arched neck there, the chick being aggressive. Funny how all that behavior is instinctive. It's just in there, and they figure it out. Just react to it. You wonder why migration wasn't in there too. Looks like that chick is also preening and behaving like the white bird's not important enough to be concerned about. Basically has his back to him, see? And then the white bird took the opportunity. And I often say in presentations that this is an awful lot like high school. A bunch of kids with way too much testosterone walking down the corridors, trying to figure out which one's the most superior. It's kind of like bullying sometimes, and displaced aggression. Sometimes if a bird is rebuffed by a larger bird, then they'll turn to some other more subservient bird and pick on them. It's kind of displaced aggression, pushes it down the line. So some little innocent bird that wasn't doing nothing all of a sudden gets poked in the head. In the wild, these 2-year-old birds would likely follow their parents back to the nesting grounds, and then once the parents established on the nesting grounds, they'd chase them off just like any other interloper. Hormones kick in and it's time to breed and produce a new generation, so they chase them away. So it's kind of our job to chase them away, basically as surrogate parents. But that's really hard to do because they can walk in water and they can walk across mud and they can fly. No matter how quick you are, how good you run, you just can't outrun a whooping crane.
Look at that chick mimicking the walk that the adult is doing.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'm sure if that fence weren't there, there'd be some aggression between them. And of course, the white birds are larger. Crane species have been around for a long, long time, and they've developed a very complex communication system. There are about 60 different calls, displays, or postures that are documented and we know the meaning of, or think we know the meaning of. And so I guess it's kind of like learning to speak Chinese by watching Chinese television. I don't know. No one there to teach you. But it is complex, and there's a lot of subtleties in it. We get to read a few of them, so when you walk into the pen, you can tell who's being aggressive and who's being subservient. You can tell when they're irritated, and you can tell when they're feeling arrogant or confident, or they lose their confidence. See that one bird with his bustle up high. One bird that just poked at the chick. It seems to be he's got the most aggressive posture right now. All this is really good learning for the chicks. It's social behavior and what happens when you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. The bustle up and the neck bent and the red patch exposed. And the wings starting to fluff to make themselves bigger. Amazing what you can say with body language. It's interesting just to watch that interaction. There's a lot going on there. You don't even notice it. A little bit of aggression between the chicks. That's less threatening because they just generally poke each other. They don't really get into fights. Those older birds, we've seen them knock down chicks flat on their backs. They can be aggressive. We never had a serious injury, but it can. Birds can kill each other, so you have to be careful. I guess, there's a familiarity too that grows between the two of them. They got the fence between and they can't really interact, but I guess they get accustomed to each other that way and figure out where their dominance lies. Here it's kind of confusing because you've got more chicks than you have adults, so maybe the chicks are feeling a little cocky. And maybe they know they're protected by a fence. That bird is definitely strutting and this bustle is up. Head cocked forward, patch exposed. The other one seems a little disinterested, more interested in picking up grasshoppers and frogs. Some of the chicks are completely disinterested. You can see the wet pen is nice and full. Birds have access to a big area of it, but there's still lots of fresh water in there, so it's being kept nice and clean. We don't have to pump water in it this year, so far. Of course, that also means that the grass on the runway is growing faster. Last year we didn't have to cut it at all, and this year we're going to have to cut it several times. So that'll be another ordeal where we walk the birds out in the marsh and bring the mowers in to cut. It's nice to see White River marshy. So here we see one of the white birds, one of the older birds on the runway. And he can obviously hear the aircraft, although we don't have audio. You can see him strutting. That's definitely a purposeful walk. You can just tell by his demeanor that he's threat posturing. He's just saying, don't come near me, don't come near me. Now what we can't see is the aircraft on the runway now, and ignoring his threat postures and taxiing towards the pin. So you can see his back turned. He's demonstrating how insignificant we are, and there come the wings, make himself bigger. Beautiful posture. Look how powerful he is. And then, of course, the aircraft ignores him completely and goes right by. So maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. Now Richard is going to try to chase the bird off, which is very difficult. He's trying to because the bird's on the runway, so if you let the chicks out, there could be aggression, plus that bird is always standing in the wrong direction. This is difficult to do, to chase a bird with a trike. You're really worried about hurting it, but you have to see if you can keep up. And they can, of course, duck underneath the wing very easily. You've got to make sure you don't run over it. Be really cautious of how you do this. But and you can see, of course, the bird is not really doing anything except just running ahead of the aircraft. No matter how fast you taxi or what you do, it just doesn't seem to be too threatened by you. And so there, he's forced him off. And he goes back to that little favorite spot. And of course, the other bird, not quite so aggressive, comes and joins him. And probably pats him on the back for being such a great fighter. They'd probably do a unison call celebrating their victory. I always think it's like they're laughing at you. So out come the chicks. We used a double door, so there's a big wide space where they can get out. And then once they're out, they'll close the doors, go back in the pen, and then Richard will train with the birds, taxi up and down. Obviously a little wind coming out of the north, because that usually is what gets their wings popped open like that. Well, we got birds flying too. Two of them actually can do a circuit. Richard is doing a circuit with them. He's going to do a tight turn and come around The idea is to get on the ground as quickly as possible. Look at this. He's doing a teardrop and coming right back in the way he came. He's probably going to hit the runway. Oh, nice job. That's a really nice job. The idea is you don't want to fly around and do a big circuit because it's kind of like having left the birds behind. You don't want to implant that mental picture. You want them to be able to follow you around, even though you can't keep up. So you get right back on the runway as soon as you can, and that's not easy to do. Take off one way, do a teardrop, and come back in the other way. The whole time watching for birds, and of course the camera post is there. You gotta be careful of that. Trees. And those two chicks. Oh, there's one there. Landed out. They're heading back towards the pen. If Richard knows that chick is out there, he'd taxi back so he could. There he goes. You see, he's taxiing back with the other birds to draw that chick out of the marsh. We have little barrier fences along the runway to stop them from just wandering into the tall grass. And it works, but sometimes when they get in the tall grass, when they fly out there, it kind of is a barrier to keep them off the runway. So sometimes you have to get out and open the hole in the fence to let the bird through. So Richard's tying off his wing. He's going to get out. They're very attentive, but not approaching it. You see the grass moving there. There's a little breeze out there. I wonder where that chick went.
Yes.
There he is. Oh. He's ambitious to get over that fence all by himself. Let's see if he can do it. Ah, there he goes. Good work. Richard's feeding them treats. In the wild, they would follow their parents usually to some place where there's food, and so, if you just run up and down the runway back and forth, there's no motivation to that. So what Richard does and what we do with training is to taxi the birds somewhere and then get out and show them some food, and then taxiing somewhere else, show them some more food, and have some time out to forage in the marsh or on the runway, which is more natural than what they would normally do in the wild. Also, when the food comes out and the chicks are running for it, the white birds can see that behavior, and so they're thinking, well, maybe there's treats over there too. So, that's why they're kind of wandering over. But that lead bird is still strutting and still has the bustle high. So, oh, and there's a chick right behind the fence there. The chick gets captured behind the fence and the white birds come up behind it. It's a dangerous situation, or could be. So, Richard sees that. He's gone in there to defuse things, if need be. One of the dominant, I see Richard's opening a hole in the fence. That chick through there. Separate them. A lot of their dominance is based on space, proximity. If you get too close, I'll poke you. And so you leave a bit of space from there. Yeah, just coax them over. There you go. I'm going to rebuff. Well, this stuff is rocket science, but it takes a long time to learn it and figure out what they're thinking and what to do and where to be and how to protect them and where the dangers are. Yeah, you can see that chick running. That's obviously running into the wind. You see the gate just close with a handler behind it, so I think they found. They got one of the birds out that was lingering in the pen. They got him out, I think. Sometimes the wind's a good thing. It gets them all going in the right direction, but other times it's a pain because they flutter off in all directions. See, they tend to fly that direction because the wind's coming in their face. The other thing you can do sometimes is just turn the trike around so that it's facing them and then back to them, and then you can run the engine hard and blow air in their face, and that will get them all pointed in the right direction. They'll all turn into that wind. They're all very attentive. It's behaving very well. Sometimes at this point they get a little independent.